Welcome to the Hopcast. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, and I'm on board Milwaukee streetcar, the Hop. It's all about connections, it's all about community, and it's all about moving Milwaukee forward. All right, welcome aboard the Milwaukee streetcar. This is the Hopcast. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. It is a beautiful, crisp fall day here in beautiful downtown Milwaukee. We're about to pass the Milwaukee Public Market, so it is fitting today that we have Paul Schwartz, the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Public Market, on board. He was appointed Executive Director in 2017. The market opened in 2005. So over 15 years, we're coming up on 20 years. Today, here in the historic Third Ward, there it is, the Milwaukee Public Market, one of the state's top tourist destinations, $20 million in sales every year, amazing flow and energy each and every day at the public market, just an amazing space. We're going to have fun talking about the public market. We're going to get Paul's insights on development. We're going to probably talk a little bit about pickleball. We're going to talk about Milwaukee, and obviously we're going to talk about moving Milwaukee forward each and every day. So sit back and enjoy, and welcome, Paul.
Thanks, man. You need to just come and start my morning every morning with stuff like that.
We need to do that, yes, we do, with a cup of coffee at the market
Great
outside
intro.
as we wait for the hop. It's great.
It's wonderful.
So I like to do 4 segments in these interviews.
Awesome.
We're going to do a little onboarding, get to know you a little bit.
Cool.
We're going to talk moving Milwaukee forward, talk about the city and some issues facing our wonderful city. We're going to do some quick hops, get to know you even more on a deeper, more personal level, and then a final destination. So we do the 2.1 miles around downtown here. And just start off, let people know, who's Paul Schwartz? Give us your story.
Oh boy. So I grew up. I'm not from Milwaukee.
Okay.
I grew up in the Kenosha County area.
Okay.
And small town, very rural. Kind of, the vast majority of the people that live within a 5-mile radius, 10-mile radius.
Right.
And classic, could not wait to get out of small town Wisconsin, and bounced around throughout college.
Okay.
And I've heard this more and more as I talk to students and kids, not sure what they wanted to do. I was a classic kid, didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I was told I should be an engineer because I was decent at math and science.
Okay.
But I had zero interest. So I went to Madison for my first year. Then I felt I'm a little bit too much in a college bubble, and I need to be in a real city or a big city.
Yeah.
So I went to Chicago for 2 years at Columbia College in Chicago. And then I took a couple years off and moved to Milwaukee to be around some friends who were living in the area.
Okay.
And then went back to school and finished up at UWM, which was a great experience at UWM. Part of me wishes I would have actually just gone there to start.
Right.
And then have been in Milwaukee ever since. And segued from not knowing what I wanted to do in school. Later on in life, what I ended up graduating with was a degree in journalism and mass communication, and then a minor in history. And then I segued into a public relations internship, and then shortly after that, became an administrative assistant at the Milwaukee Public Market.
Okay.
And the rest is history, as they say.
Okay. So were you there early on as the financing and the model and everything was being put together, or did you come on a couple of years after that?
I came on after there was the transition of ownership in 2007.
Okay.
From the original group into the bid and the association and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I came on. I was one of the first hires, and after that transition took place in the new management structure. And, very similar, not a ton has changed in terms of the ethos of you're doing everything you can to make it work and to make it become the place it is,
So 17 years for the Milwaukee Public Market in the historic Third Ward. If people don't know, it's just south of downtown Milwaukee, really a connected community to greater downtown.
Right.
And so talk a little bit about the original vision of the public market and kind of how it's evolved and changed since it opened.
Yeah, I don't think it was, the original vision was not dissimilar to a lot of the national public markets around the country, right? You have these models where it's owned by a quasi-public or nonprofit organization. The vendor mix inside is very segmented into not a butcher, but somebody who only sells poultry. And then you have meats, and then you have veggies, and I think back, it was great in concept, and the design of the building by Kubala-Wyschatka is probably one of their crown jewels of their portfolio. It's a lot of times what people like to visit about Milwaukee is seeing the building and the aesthetics.
Right.
And I think that's what saved it in a lot of ways in the transition. But the model after we took over was, kind of more of a hybrid model, which you're seeing in the public markets that have been successful for decades around the country, which is a mix of prepared foods and having kind of common sense vendors offering products that are grocery related but not so specific and siloed into their way of offering. So I think it's worked out well.
Right. And obviously the iconic sign, Milwaukee Public Market, that you see illuminates at night, and it's just really a beacon in the skyline of Milwaukee.
It certainly is the billboard essentially that advertises not only the market, but that you're in the city and that you're people liken it to the Pike Place sign in Seattle. Anything that shows the streetscapes in the city of Seattle is iconic to the Pike Place market. So that's kind of how the market is here.
Yeah. You talked a lot about the design and the infrastructure of the building. Developers often talk about like centers of gravity, right, mm-hmm. for entertainment and economic development. How has the public market really contributed to that economic and entertainment success of Milwaukee?
So without being an urban planner, you could just kind of look at, and you know this, back in 2005, the Benelux building was vacant. The street along Broadway did not have the center parking street. It was boulevard parking. It was basically kind of desolate and outside there. There was no traffic controls around that intersection. The development and the economic ripple effect in the surrounding area was significantly less than it is today. I think that it helped spark a level of interest or continued interest in the greater downtown area, and specifically in the north part of the Third Ward, as the signature site that was going to help the ripple effect of development around there. And it has, if you look at all the buildings and all the development, and especially if you look at the businesses that want to be within close proximity to the market, or the residential population that wants to be in close proximity, I think it has reached that goal.
Yeah. And how many vendors now?
17 total.
17. So as you look at, you mentioned some other markets in other cities. Are there other cities, markets that inspire the Milwaukee Public Market, or you're truly looking to be kind of your own unique destination?
I think every market has to have some individuality within the community or the city that it has. Because that's how the city kind of defines what the markets are, and vice versa.
Good point. Yeah.
And so, but the ones that I look to constantly, and their leadership especially that I communicate with, are Reading Terminal Market in Philadelphia. It's been around for over 100 years. Obviously Pike Place, but then you have the smaller market or smaller city, mid-sized city markets that are in Grand Rapids, and are in North Market in Columbus, Ohio. You have West Side Market in Cleveland. Those offer to me a real good glimpse at something that can be comparable because of the size of the city and the scope of the city, the makeup of the city. For instance, Cleveland being right on also another Great Lake and having a pretty robust port development, and kind of an industrial town that has kind of seen a renaissance in recent years. Those markets, there's countless others that I communicate with, but those markets in particular really kind of speak to me.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the vendor mix. Are there, you look at, what are the leases, what's the makeup? Are there components that you feel like are missing? You wake up every day and you're like, gosh, I wish I had this type of vendor or this type, or what are customers asking for?
Yeah,
or you think you're there?
I wish I had more space. I think that's the biggest.
Let's build another one.
Yeah, let's build up. The mix of vendors, especially as we've evolved, we've actually expanded and modified spaces to be able to accommodate more than what was originally intended. There was going to be less vendors in there that had bigger footprints. We've kind of broken stuff up to be able to accommodate more and separate some in. The answer to your question about the food makeup is always going to be indicative of the fact that Milwaukee's food scene is constantly changing, and the ownership structure of people who are opening businesses are doing that. We're always meant to be this kind of incubator of the businesses that start there, a lot of the businesses who started at the market have expanded into other locations, including some of the other food halls in the area too. So that is a market of success in and of itself. There's always new food trends and new product lines that we want introduced, and if an existing vendor can't do it in the way in which they feel appropriate, we'll always look at maybe some space modifications. But at this time, we're at full capacity.
Right.
You know, really, to be honest with you, Jeff, the thing that I think about and have thought about since I was appointed director has been expanding outside the walls of the market. So we shouldn't just think about the market, about the interior layout and floor plan.
Yeah.
What are we doing outside on the sidewalk? What are we doing with temporary vendors? How are we adding elements to the surrounding area to really make it a district, i.e. pickleball courts and recreational things that are not specific to food, but just kind of help the overall experience in the area. And that's what I've been trying to do.
Great, very good. You've done a wonderful job.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Let's talk about the hop specifically.
Yeah.
Obviously, two stops that are very central and close to the public market. You've been a great partner in many ways on events and promotions.
Yeah.
So, talk about the importance of public transit and the hop to what you're doing in the third ward.
I meant to send you this before we started this, but so a great example about the way the hop influences the market and vice versa is I was sitting, so we had the Third Ward Art Festival over Labor Day weekend, and I was out on the sidewalk and it was bustling. It was packed with people on the sidewalk of St. Paul Avenue. And I stood by the hop stop and I took a video of it pulling up and all the people getting off, just the flow of people getting off the hop. It was a packed hop that was getting off down there. Now what is it? That's kind of indicative of the way in which I think hop movement really kind of affects flow at the market. So you have people who are coming into town specifically, and I know that was a busy holiday weekend, but coming into town specifically, park their vehicle, whether it's at a hotel or they're staying with friends and don't have a vehicle, and want an easy way to get around downtown without having to find parking and navigate through all of that. Yeah. And they want to touch on these main areas that they really want to go to. I heard about the Third Ward, I want to go to there. I heard about the public market. I heard about going north into the east side area. It's a way in which travel, and especially if they're coming from other cities where this type of transportation is growing or already existing, they're familiar with it, and it can only grow from there. I think that we have seen, especially as you've seen our parking lot, we're never going to grow parking in the way in which we need to grow it.
Right.
So I don't think necessarily, in fact, when the hop was being installed, there was a series of parking spaces that was along the sidewalk of St. Paul Avenue that we actually agreed with the city, and the partnership with the city took them all away and expanded the sidewalk to kind of make it more of a plaza.
Right.
Because we just knew that the thing you need along these routes is kind of more placemaking, and because it kind of synergizes off of each other. And so I really feel like the customer base, having a stop right out there is really great because it gives people this other transportation mechanism to get down there without having to worry about parking. And then vice versa, if people are coming to the market or into the city and they're visiting the market for the first time, we answer countless questions about, hey, how can we get around the city? Is there an easy way? Can we leave our car here and then drive? And the hop stop is right outside. They can go right there. So It's great. That intersection of Broadway and St. Paul, I mean, it's the vibrancy of the city, and on weekends in particular, there's nothing like it.
People waiting for brunch, you have the bubbler station, you have the hop stops. I mean, it's just, there's just
walking
enormous
as well,
energy, without
Absolutely.
a doubt. It's great. Well, let's talk a little bit more about Milwaukee on kind of a bigger scale.
Yeah.
I always like to ask people, if you had this like magic Milwaukee wand, what's your wish for the city of Milwaukee moving forward?
I don't know that it would be so multidimensional in terms of an answer. I think that I think a difference of opinion is a really important thing to have, especially as you're brainstorming ideas for the city. I hope that we don't get to the point where we become we become so divisive in our opinions that we isolate each other and we only focus on the silo of ideas that we have, and it creates such friction that we can't let things evolve and develop because of that. And I really feel like that's more of a kind of a substance issue with dialogue and communication and stuff like that.
Right.
It's important to have debates on how things should be laid out. It's important to have debates on infrastructure and businesses and development and stuff like that. Come on through, man. But I feel like if we really could form the coalition that's needed to really kind of push this through together, and do it arm in arm. I feel like that's going to be bigger than any sort of single development or any sort of mixed use property or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at history and the history of Milwaukee, a lot of those big decisions were led by very powerful and very driven people that had a coalition and had uniformity. Even if the way in which to get there had a difference of opinions, it was just this sort of feeling that it was all in it together. And I hope that we can stay to that. I have opinions about how streets should be laid out and how we should have better biking and pedestrian related streets and walkways. But I think those come over time, and I think that the city's really getting there, and the mayor is certainly pushing for a lot of those initiatives too.
Yeah.
But I think beyond local governments and politics and everything like that, I think if we can all have the mindset of kind of being together and realizing that we're all in this together to make Milwaukee a better city, that ethos in all of us could really help.
Yeah, I remember one of the early on when the streetcar system was being talked about. Gary Gruno, rest in peace,
right.
was a collaborator die. That was his mantra, and it really resonated at so many levels. So in terms of recruitment and retention to Milwaukee, the mayor talks often about his vision to get 1 million population in the city.
Yep.
And you talked about pedestrian friendly and bike friendly and more public transit. How important is that mix to the recruitment and retention of more people to come to the Midwest and to come to Milwaukee specifically to live?
I think it's great, and I think the genius behind the goal of 1 million people is so much. It expands so far beyond that single sentence of let's get Milwaukee's population to 1 million people, because then you have to start thinking about development, zoning. You have to start thinking about schools. How do you keep people here? You have to start thinking about the quality of life. What are the public space amenities that people are really going to want to? What are the recreational amenities, whether it's pickleball, food scenes, the things that really get people to gather and to really think about where they want to live. Think about that. And then that is all encompassing in this goal to reach 1 million residents in the city of Milwaukee. And then how do you improve neighborhoods? How do you improve connectivity? I go back to schools, and my daughter's just starting at NPS this year. All of these things make this city and keep people in this city, make it great. And how do you continue to think about it comprehensively? So I think about all those things, and I think about, yes, you'll have a lot of people. I don't know that people are going to move to this city because a certain population will move to the city because it has proper bike lanes and protected bike lanes and better pedestrian access, but it's not going to be the silver bullet. What makes them want to stay? What are the people who, the empty nesters who are moving from the suburbs, why are they coming down here? Let's just not think about this as the 20-somethings who are graduating college and are going to live here for a while. What are we doing for the people who are empty nesters from New Berlin who are coming down here, buying a condo? What do they want to do with their lives? They want to be closer to everything. They want to have less maintenance on their house. They want to have a whole host of activities and things to be able to do in walking distance. And I think that as long as we can keep checking off those boxes as a city, whatever it is, development site goes here, let's make sure it's got a mixed-use development. Let's make sure it's got residential, and then first floor can be restaurants and retail, and so that you can actually improve the density of the city. I think that's going to be really important. I went off on multiple areas there. I'm sorry.
That's good. No, that's great. That's what we ask the questions that way. I love it. So there's been a lot of development around kind of community-centric food hall spaces, right? We have the Sherman Phoenix, we have the Crossroads Collective, we have the new 3rd Street Market Hall. What do you appreciate about kind of the additional growth of all the food, not only the food community, but all the food halls in the area, and how do y'all work together?
Yeah, I think it's great. I think food halls, public markets, however you want to define them and separate them, because we're all different in our own right, really help not only define the greater Milwaukee food scene, but they really are neighborhood based if you think about it. Crossroad Collective on the east side of North Avenue, really centric around that area, right? You know that's the epicenter of the east side. 3rd Street Market Hall, I've talked to Omar about this, West Wisconsin Avenue, and the success of West Wisconsin Avenue is good for the entire city. So the energy that's kind of lifted up from that and the draw is important. The public market, our market, is going to have our best year on record this calendar year. We're trending for that right now. There shouldn't be this sort of thought process of well, you can't have competition, if you want to call it that, or you can't have multiple options for this stuff.
Yeah.
If it is competition makes everybody better. It elevates your game. Are you? If you were complacent before because you were the only game in town, what are you thinking about now to make yourself a little bit better? I mean, that's how we should be reacting to each other.
Yeah.
But I do talk to all the operators of those. Sherman Phoenix, I think, was such an important development for Sherman Park. And I think what they've done there and how they've created this community asset has been so impressive. To me, it's probably one of the better pieces of neighborhood developments that we've seen in the last 10 years in the greater city of Milwaukee. You know, as we talk about, we spend a lot of time talking about downtown because we're on the hop and things like that. But as you talk about neighborhoods and how a lot of the people who live in the neighborhoods in the city of Milwaukee really don't leave that bubble of their neighborhood that frequently. There's not a lot of them that do.
Yeah.
So how do you create these amenities there? And I think the Sherman Phoenix is a great example of that.
Yeah, agree. So you talked a little bit about kind of extending the public market, looking out at kind of some of the asphalt and areas that you can develop. Pickleball has really come into focus. You know, some really vibrant pickleball courts underneath the expressway. You know, just talk about that, and then from a user standpoint, how do I have to bring my own racket and pickleball?
You don't.
I don't. I think you got me cut. Yeah, I played 4 years of varsity tennis. I'm coming for you. But just talk about the pickleball and that, again, kind of the growth of the sport and how it's enhanced what you have at the public market.
Yeah. So it goes back to predating the freeway reconstruction in 2015. So if you remember, so you had the Marquette Interchange construction project that was in early 2000s, and then you had the I-794 and the Home Bridge resurfacing project of 2014-2015. At that point, there was a real focus on the areas under the freeway and there was this kind of great divide between especially downtown and the Third Ward. And in particular, I think it was the 2010 study of Milwaukee Downtown's nighttime economy plan that really kind of injected this sort of feeling about, okay, how do you make it safer? Under freeway parcels pre-2015 was dark.
Yeah.
It questions people's safety in terms of their walkability and stuff like that. How could that be improved? And so that ignited this conversation about doing these things that fast forward 10 years, we were able to really kind of get off the ground. And so in partnership with Milwaukee Downtown, we've done a number of agreements with the state of Wisconsin, WSDOT, and federal highways in Milwaukee County to make sure that we can utilize the infrastructure under the freeway to better enhance the quality of life at the street level, which we kind of define as the human level, right? WSDOT and everything, when they devise plans for freeways, they think about moving people above ground, above the freeway.
Right.
And so what people like myself, Matt Dorner, Beth Weirick, have kind of brought into focus has been under freeway activation. How do you, from an aesthetic point of view, you see along Broadway, we have the 4 freeway piers that have the new murals on them, aesthetic lighting that's lighting down the projects, and then at Riverwalk Commons, where we're referencing the pickleball courts, we added pickleball courts there, and then over the summer we had a concert series on Tuesday nights where we had music, food trucks, beer trucks, and just on a Tuesday night livened up this whole space, and you're under the freeway. So I think one of the interesting things, especially when I go to travel at other cities, that you're in, you could go to a concert, an outdoor concert in a lot of places, but if it's in this unique setting, all of a sudden it just kind of creates this perception that whomever's doing this or the city that's doing stuff like this is really interesting. And again, it triggers the quality of life experience that people want and they want to be around all the time.
Yeah.
And so our next focus is going to be on the dog park across the river, and adding the amenity to the greater downtown area. And the closest dog park to downtown is 3.5 miles away in Bayview.
Oh, wow.
But you have this population increase in the greater downtown area, and a lot of those people living in the condos don't have children, but they have pets and dogs in particular, and they have really no place to take them.
Yeah.
So we've been thinking about this just comprehensively for a long time, and have great relationships now with the state and federal highways and the county to really kind of execute these plans. So it'll be fun.
Great. All right. We can bring our dogs to the pickleball courts too, right?
It's funny. So the pickleball courts obviously use every day, and my walk over to the station, people were playing there. But all of a sudden, we get this call over the summer saying, "Hi, this is Milwaukee Bucks. The players are going to be out there. Is it cool if we bring the players out?" And just we're like, "Yeah, go ahead." So we have this great footage of Middleton and all these guys out there playing pickleball for the afternoon, just enjoying themselves and talking trash to one another.
That's great. Like that. I love it.
So it's really becoming known. And ESPN magazine, I think it was, or Sports Illustrated. A recent issue had pickleball as the fastest growing sport in the country.
Yeah.
So, obviously, I think when you're thinking about outdoor recreational sports, especially for a city, pickleball courts come into play because they don't need an enormous footprint, and you also need something that people can walk up and play, like basketball courts and pickleball courts. And the same way, where you can just kind of pick up with people. You can go there and walk over there and all of a sudden just start playing with somebody who may be just kind of sitting on the sidelines. So we see a lot of that too, kind of community-oriented recreation.
Very good, very good. All right, we're going to do little quick hops here. 10 quick questions.
Okay.
If I had a timer, I'd set it, but
you should.
All right, I'm going to do it. Let's go. So what book are you reading right now, Paul?
So I'm on a little bit of a hiatus for like the last month, just because of end of summer stuff. The one I finished over the summer, which I loved, was actually called The Gatekeepers. It's about the position of White House Chief of Staff and all of the people who have taken on that role over the course of the last 50 some odd years, and interviewing them. And
nice.
I'm a fan of leadership roles, and especially stuff like that.
All right, That's big West Wing fan. I always go back and rewatch episodes. I'm going to add that to my list. So an insider tip for someone that's coming to Milwaukee for the first time?
Milwaukee for the first time, don't drive a car, and follow the waterways, okay? So I guess what I mean by that is walk the river walk by the lakefront. The river will actually take you in a lot of really interesting neighborhoods. And just force yourself to not use a car. You're a walker. I mean, you view things differently. You stumble upon things that maybe you weren't expecting to do, and it slows you down a little bit. So
that's very good. All right, I was going to ask you for your favorite vendor at the public market. I'll say, what's your favorite restaurant in Milwaukee instead, so you don't have to pick your favorite child.
I would have had 16 other vendors yelling at me. Favorite restaurant, and it's the restaurant. And this is not the reason why we like it, but it's where my wife and I's first date, but it's La Miranda in Walker's Point.
Nice.
I think Peter Sandroni, it holds up, and it's still to this day one of the best restaurants in the city.
100% agree. Do you have a favorite podcast?
Besides the Hopcast, or besides the Hopcast?
Well, besides the Hopcast, of course. Yes.
I
appreciate
it would
that.
be, I don't listen to a ton, but I get. I'm not a huge politics person, but I get entertained by this podcast called Hacks on Tap. It's with David Axelrod and the Democratic side, and Mike Murphy, who's a Republican strategist. And they open a beer and just riff off each other and kind of make it entertaining. An entertaining way to kind of focus on politics. And I've listened to quite a number of those episodes before.
Okay. Very good. I'm sure you've had tons of wonderful conversations, including this one in your life.
Yeah.
But what's like one of the best conversations you've ever had? Like, do you have one that you're like, whoa, it was enlightening. I learned so much.
So the conversation I've had, and this one is fantastic as well. The conversations I've had are usually with people I admire greatly, and who, especially those lately who have been towards the end of their life, because they typically have knowledge that expands their lifespan, and then also have no hidden agenda or reason why they want to lie to you. So I had great conversations with my grandfather, and then Dad, towards the end of his life. So those are probably the two.
Yeah, very good. One movie or like piece of content that you'd want to consume for the first time again, like something that you're like, wow, I want to forget that. I want to go back and experience it.
Man, that's a lot of content that I had that emotion. So I was lucky enough, and in some ways, I saw the Red Hot Chili Peppers when I was like 13 years old live. It was like one of my first live shows.
All right.
And I was my heart was about to explode when I saw it, and it was like still one of the top live shows I've ever had in my life, and it was because it was the first one. You just had this kind of this veil lifted to this new experience in your life. That would probably be up there in terms of that experience again, especially just them as a band during the early to mid '90s. I felt like it was a special time in music. So
very good. I like it. Are you an Apple or Android guy?
Apple.
Very good. All right. Favorite city other than Milwaukee?
It'd probably be Canadian cities at the moment. Vancouver and Toronto are really tough to compete with. I like a lot of American cities, but I've been in the last 4 or 5 years. I've been to Vancouver and Toronto both multiple times, and they're pretty incredible. And the city design, the planning, the transportation, all of them, the markets. You have St. Lawrence Market in Toronto, and then Granville Island Market in Vancouver. It's an occupational hazard that I go to cities that have markets, but all of those are really well done in their cities too, and really representative of how those cities are made up of. But yeah, I would say that changes, but I would say right now those are the two top ones I love.
All right. You have a lot of celebrity guests come through the public market. Who's the most famous person you've ever met?
Okay, so I knew you were going to ask me this one, so I really had to think. And there's been a lot of people that I've met that are you and a lot of people know.
Yeah.
The one that probably is most known nationally and perhaps locally is actually Weird Al, which is ridiculous, right? But at the same time, when I have told people Weird Al has been in the market, people have been like, "Oh my, you've met him?" And I've met him, and he's like, "You've met Weird Al?" It's like it touches everybody's life. And we've had, as recently as over the summer, had Machine Gun Kelly and his wife come into the market, and there's a fair amount of people, and local politicians and governors and stuff like that who come in here. But Weird Al is probably the most famous.
Very good. I like it. All right, and then finally for the quick hops, what gives you the most energy?
Passion. And community.
Nice. Yeah.
And if those two can combine, then you've lost me. I'm energized. I'm committed.
So. That's right. All right. That's what the Hopcast is all about.
Awesome.
Connections and community. So final destination question as we head back up St. Paul here and get back to the intermodal station just past the public market.
Yeah.
I always like to ask people to define success.
So I think it goes back to probably passion is what I mentioned before, but there was a great quote, and I used to follow a lot the former CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Weiner, who was, I think, really talented at giving kind of his lessons in life, but also from a professional and personal world. He said, I think, and I'm paraphrasing, defining success is waking up in the morning and looking forward or can't wait to get to your professional destination, and then at the end of your day, looking forward and can't wait to get home to your loved ones and your family and your personal life. That's what I got.
It's all about.
So,
that's awesome.
So
I wake up every day and I can't wait to have my breakfast taco at the Milwaukee Public Market. All right, and I love my family. I love
awesome.
the breakfast tacos at the public market.
Very successful life.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you for taking the time this
Jeff.
morning, Paul. It's been a lot of fun. A friendly reminder to follow the Hop on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can see every episode of the Hopcast, including this one with Paul Schwartz, the Executive Director of the Milwaukee Public Market. See you next time on Milwaukee Streetcar. I'm Jeff Sherman, and this is the Hopcast.